The mentor I had at the time truly taught me accountability and what it means to hold people accountable. Um, and it's not an easy thing to do. I think naturally most people are not interested in conflict. They're not interested in having to have those difficult and challenging discussions and conversations. It's uncomfortable. Even after doing it for 20 plus years, it's still not fun. I don't know anyone that enjoys it, but it's necessary. I think it's necessary for success. And he really taught me how to hold people accountable.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferranbi, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. Today, I have the honor of having Roger Brecht on the show. He's currently the Vice President of Digital Manufacturing at Nestle Purina. For over 20 years, he has worked at Nestle Purina to continually innovate and shape the future of pet care for your pets and all of ours as well. So that was just a brief introduction. Roger, how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Roger Brecht. I'm the Vice President of Digital Manufacturing for Nestle Purina Petcare in North America. I've been with Nestle for over 20 years. Never thought that would even be a thing. Looking back, it's been a heck of a ride with a lot of learnings along the way. So really enjoy what I'm doing now and excited about what the future holds.
That's really exciting. So I know you just said that you didn't expect yourself to be here for 20 years. Was there something else when you were first getting out of college, or what 20 plus years ago, what were you thinking you were going to be doing?
Right. So I graduated from the University of Iowa in May of 2000. So I'm sure there's some folks that might be watching this that weren't even around yet at that time. And
Maybe.
my intent was I got a good offer. I did exactly what you're not supposed to do. I interviewed with Purina. I got my first offer, and then I took it. And everyone at the time was coaching me up. No, you need to look around more. And honestly, the offer was solid. I thought it would give me some good experience. I didn't have any internships or anything, unfortunately, so I really needed some practical experience. And in my mind, I was going to work there about a year to 18 months,
Oh, really?
get a little bit of experience, which in my mind, that was extensive experience.
Yeah.
And then I was going to relocate to the Chicagoland area and find a job in the ISIT, I guess, workplace.
Yeah.
I really had a desire to live the city life.
Oh, awesome. So then, did you grow up in Iowa then?
Yeah, I grew up in eastern Iowa near Cedar Rapids. So then the University of Iowa was only about 45 minutes or so from my house. I went to a really small school in high school, so I was anxious to get to some place where I might see you the first day of campus, and we might be there for 4 more years together, and I never see you again. It was just to be able to kind of broaden my horizons, and so
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
went there, and then the first job was in the Quad Cities, also in Iowa.
Okay. No, that's really cool. And I know you mentioned University of Iowa. I'm Iowa State, and I have it up there. We'll set aside the rivalry at least for this. I see that the Hawkeyes like it back there too.
Right.
But yeah, so it's proof that Hawkeyes and Cyclones can get along.
We can intermingle, right?
Yes, we can. We can. But yeah, for sure. So that's really interesting as far as you were thinking going to Chicago after 18 months, a year. What changed as far as did you get to move with Purina, or what happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think part of it was, I'm not sure many people go to college or grow up thinking I want to work in manufacturing, and I certainly didn't. My father was a maintenance technician in a manufacturing setting most of his career. My mother worked in kind of in a clerical role, and so I had seen manufacturing, but it wasn't anything that really interested me. The offer came, and so I thought, well, this is a good enough offer to get started.
Yeah.
A year into my career, Nestle bought Purina, and then that provided me my first relocation opportunity and first real crack at some major project work, and I really enjoyed it. It was the type of high paced, high energy type exposure and environment that I was looking for. So
Okay.
I think that was kind of when things shifted, and I quit looking around, and I was so focused on doing well on this specific project of integrating the two organizations. And so that's what really kind of moved the needle. And then I transitioned out of ISIT into operations,
Oh,
and
wow.
then it was kind of full steam ahead with building a career with it at Purina.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know that's how we got connected for
Right?
my days at Purina. Lots of trips up to the Clinton factory while you were a factory
Yeah.
manager up there. And that's not too far from the Quad Cities area either.
Nope, nope, not at all.
Awesome. So one reason I really wanted to have you on the podcast is that you are someone that what I've seen and what other people have told me as well, your leadership is tremendous, and you have a really good way of getting people to follow you, which is really uncommon with a lot of leaders. I know some people do it better than others, but I've heard nothing but good things from you, and I've also heard it from others.
Have you enjoyed listening to the IncrediPaul podcast? Are you looking for a way to support it? Or maybe you just want some swag? Check out the IncrediPaul store today. We have shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, and so much more. Go to IncrediPaul.org, IncrediPaul.org, and click on the store link. Or go to the link in my socials bio and click on the IncrediPaul shop. Looking forward to seeing your IncrediPaul look.
So I'm curious as far as what kind of took you on this leadership journey, because I know you said you started in manufacturing. You kind of had the opportunity to integrate Nestle and Purina, which is an undertaking in itself with all of that. But was there a point or a switch where you felt you were a leader, or you were more intentional about building your leadership skills?
Sure. Yeah, I think it was my first real role within Nestle Purina and leading was actually a third shift supervisory role. So I went from being the IT person at the factory to a third shift production supervisor
Wow.
slash IT person.
Oh, so
And I
you're
had
doing
a group
both?
of about yeah, right. Kind of a weird twist there. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's any that have followed that same path.
Yeah.
But it was the best thing that happened to me. I had an
Okay.
interest in leading. I've always been outgoing or extroverted. I always, in college, I like to be around big groups and interact with others.
Yeah.
But leading is something that's considerably different. And so this was my first crack at it. And it was also my first exposure to trying to live your life when your daylight hours are 10 p.m. at night till about 9 a.m. in the morning.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
all joking aside, there is no daylight, of course, during that time.
Yes,
So
no.
it was quite a change. But there was about 20 to 25 folks that reported directly to me, and that was my first shot at it. And I learned a ton. I will be the first one to tell you, lots of opportunities. There's some folks I wish I could go back to and apologize to for, as I was trying to really feel my way around what it takes to truly lead and what the difference between leading and managing is. And to me, there's a considerable difference.
Yeah.
But that's where I got my feet wet with it. And that's, I think at that point, even when it was pretty difficult at first trying to make all those adjustments, I felt like I was really in my element, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's where I wanted to grow.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. And so you kind of hit it on this, like the difference between leading and managing. What do you consider the differences, either like from your personal stories or maybe stuff that's happened to you?
Sure. I think so. You manage your finances, right? I mean, those are things. That's something that you manage. You lead. Leading is different. I think leading requires, to your earlier point, getting the bulk of a group of people to head in a direction that you feel is the right direction for the better of the group. And I think it requires being transparent, being open, being open to feedback, being willing to change and adjust based on the needs of others. And I think it also requires you to recognize very early on that you don't know everything. And the minute you think you do, you probably need to take a step back. But often I've run into people, and I've had some mentors, or people that were, I reported directly to, that I think spent more time trying to manage, my time, rather than giving me the flexibility and, putting some guardrails up, but allowing me to work within those guardrails, knowing full well I'm going to make some mistakes, but that's how I'm going to grow
Yeah.
too. So that's the type of leadership I've always appreciated, versus someone who I felt was managing me, at a very micro level.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that though. The micromanaging. I know no one really likes to be micromanaged, but it comes from trying to control and make sure that things are happening what you think is the right way as the manager, but it doesn't give the employee or the direct report, it doesn't give them an opportunity to grow with, like with the guardrails that you mentioned, that you can learn from your successes, but you learn a lot more from your mistakes or your failures. And
For sure.
and having a leader that is there to guide you as opposed to direct you, I think is key.
No, I agree 100%. The phrase I've often used, and I know I didn't come up with this on my own. I had a good mentor at some point that gave me this example, but I've often said, I need you to fly the plane. I can't have you down on the ground in the middle of everything, trying to make every decision, trying to, pull every lever that you can. That's where you have to build trust within your teams, and you need to be at a 30,000-foot level, where you're there if needed, but you have to create that decision space where it needs to be and where it's most effective.
That's really good. That's good. So I know you mentioned that you transitioned into this third shift supervisor role and also doing IT, which I don't know how you were doing both of those things.
Probably not very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's two different things. I don't know how you were doing that. But so I know you said obviously there's opportunities. It's the first time you're leading or managing. What were some things? I know you talked about some mentors. Was that in that role or like in another role, or were there any key moments in your career that you learned things, or like someone spoke into you or anything like that?
Yeah, there's probably two that stood out early on in that third shift role. The mentor I had at the time truly taught me accountability and what it means to hold people accountable. And it's not an easy thing to do. I think naturally most people are not interested in conflict. They're not interested in having to have those difficult and challenging discussions and conversations. It's uncomfortable. Even after doing it for 20 plus years, it's still not fun. I don't know anyone that enjoys it, but it's necessary. I think it's necessary for success. And he really taught me how to hold people accountable. It's interesting. He often would comment and say, continue doing what you're doing. Don't hold people accountable the way that I do, the way that he did, because he was a bit abrasive, and his approach was probably a little bit outdated.
Okay.
And he recognized that, and he would still tell me, you keep going down the path you're going and don't act like me. And in my head, I'm like, well, why do you do that then?
Right.
But no, so he helped me understand accountability for sure. And he walked me through. He was great about, I'll call it like dry run or role playing. He was so good at putting me in a position where, let's say I knew I was going to have a difficult conversation that evening. And so as he and I were kind of going through the particular morning before I left, he would, sit me down and say, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm going to be the employee.
Okay.
And you sit down just like you're going to tonight, and let's walk through it. And he would make it really difficult for me, but it helped prep me so well for that particular evening. I felt like I was prepared, and so I've often done that with others as well, just as something that I thought was a best practice. I think the second thing that stands out from people that I've had mentor me before, one individual, and he just recently retired from our organization. He sat me down. I was at a pivotal point in my career. I was looking for more responsibility. In my head, I was ready for it. He recognized that I was not, and it had to do with I was too emotional So I got too high and I got too low, and it could, that could change just given how the particular shift or the particular week was and the operation was performing.
Yeah.
So he helped me. He gave me, he knows I'm an avid sports fan. So he gave me some analogies with some successful coaches in sports.
Nice.
And, encouraged me to consider the next time I'm ready to get too high or get too low, reflect on how would, John Wooden handle this situation?
Okay.
How would Mike Krzyzewski handle this situation?
Okay.
Just a couple of names.
Yeah.
And it had me pause, and it was really effective and impactful. And I think that helped me take a huge leap in rapport with the teams I was leading. It certainly helped. I always felt like I had an open door policy, but it helped reinforce that because there wasn't the level of animation that there probably was earlier on in my career as a leader. And so that would certainly deter some folks from wanting to come in and talk, not knowing if I was going to be, in a great place or if I was going to be, animated in a negative manner. So he helped me understand that and coach me on that. And I'm forever thankful because I think that was a huge turning point in my career after that.
Wow. Those are two really powerful examples. The one thing I want to highlight is just for you to be able to be mentored speaks to you as a leader, because it's really easy to be in a position of leadership and feel like everything is going fine, like I'm doing everything okay. But you seeking out the mentorship and applying what they said, like as far as the difficult conversations, I know that's something I'm being more intentional now about, being proactive about having those difficult conversations instead of waiting until the last minute is the route I normally take. And I'm like, this doesn't help me, it doesn't help them if I keep waiting. So I think that's really key.
Yeah, two really, really strong individuals that, had certainly had successful careers as well, and that there's a reason for it. But yeah, can't thank them enough.
Yeah, that's really good. As also for the second thing that you mentioned, as far as now my mind is blanking on what you said next.
More of be less high, less low.
Oh yeah, the emotional side. Yeah.
Emotional.
Yeah. I had it and I lost it. That's the beauty.
No, you're fine.
Of recording stuff. But I think that's a big piece of leadership is emotional intelligence, as far as managing your emotions. And I think that's what he was able to teach you, and to see that. That's another key thing. So on that realm, because I know you talk about the managing the emotions, what has been your approach to either keeping yourself tempered, not getting too high or not getting too low? How do you keep yourself together, I guess?
It's a battle, let me tell you. Now, it's gotten easier. It's improved over time and gotten easier to handle over time. At first, it was extremely difficult, and I was about probably 10 years into my career, so about the halfway point where I am right now.
Yeah.
And that was, I would have to go and just, when my natural instinct was to, want to explode, I would actually go and either back to my office. A lot of times I've found if I just went and did a lap in the factory, like go out in the warehouse area where there's less individuals and it's a little bit more quiet. You don't have the steady hum of the equipment. A few times I would go on the roof of the building, honestly, and just kind of take a minute to collect myself. Those are some things I did initially. I think as I got more responsibility, then as I was starting to feel those same, what do you want to call them, urges or natural instinct, I would actually go and find another leader in our team and sit down and talk with them and walk through it with them on, hey, here's where I'm at right now. And I want, let's have some dialogue back and forth.
Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? Then coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to IncrediPaul for help. So what are you waiting for? go to IncrediPaul.org/coaching, IncrediPaul.org/coaching, or at I am IncrediPaul on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself.
And what it did was, or what I thought it was doing, was providing them insight into, we always can improve. And here's what I do when I'm in one of those situations, especially if I know they have similar mannerisms too. And so you kind of do this double coaching, and I seek out feedback from them, and I'm asking them to coach me up, but then in the same time, they're getting a part of this experience too to help them as they move forward too. So that's where it's kind of gravitated to. But like I said, I've done everything from walk the parking lot, go to the roof, and take 10 minutes, but really initially it was stepping away from the situation and trying to almost let myself diffuse before saying or doing anything. And it probably helped that at the time, my family, we were just starting a family at home, and I had 3 small children. And so I got to have a lot of practice at home and work, where I had to make sure I was not flying off the handle. So I was getting a lot of practice there. So that probably helped too.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's a good point. And I think both of those are good strategies as far as just giving it some time or finding someone trusted that you can talk to about it. And that's helped me a lot. I know there's been some things in the recent past with some things, the way things were handled, and I'm like, what is going on? But talking to people about it helps me simmer down and like, okay, just focus on what I can control, how we can diffuse the situation. So that's really good. I like that. But I know we've been talking. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
You touched on a key point. I think I'd be remiss to say, I've got a brother-in-law who's one of my closest friends, and he works in manufacturing. He's always been a few steps ahead of me in terms of responsibility, and he's been a huge help when you're having those types of situations. And sometimes it's a text exchange, and sometimes that leads to a 2-minute phone call. But it's amazing, to your point, if you've got somebody that you can trust, that is not always going to tell you, certainly not going to tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. That comes in extremely helpful. So I can't thank him enough either.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Because when you have people around you, whether you're leading them or just close friends, you can't grow from that. You can't get better from it. So being intentional about seeking out people who are going to help you grow, I think that's really good.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. But I know we've been talking a lot about leadership, but I want the audience to also get to know you just in general as well. I know you had mentioned that you're an avid sports fan. What is your go-to sports? What do you like?
So I'm a football guy. I had a great opportunity when I was in college to work for the University of Iowa football team. So
wow.
I went from playing sports all through high school and liking to play sports, and certainly watching the Iowa Hawkeyes when I was a kid on TV, to suddenly I'm on the sideline during games. I'm at every practice. These are my friends out there playing now. So it was a huge probably transitioned me into more of the fanatic part of a fan. So I'm definitely a diehard Iowa Hawkeye fan. I enjoy college football and pro football, and then I do like college basketball as well. My boys, they've all played football and awesome. Wrestled and played lacrosse, and so and each time I get a chance to watch them play is awesome too.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I know wrestling is really big in Iowa, and the Hawkeyes are usually number 1 or number 2 every year.
Yep, that was, my dad took us, my brother and I, to a couple of duels when we were kids. We weren't wrestlers. I was a basketball player, but it's still such a fun sport and so intense. And my 3 boys all did it, here and there for a few years. And it was, as a parent, probably the most anxious sport I've ever watched in my entire life, because every other sport, there's 8 to 10 other people out on the field, or even double that at times. And mistakes are a little bit harder to see, but when you're the only one on the mat with one other person, it's pretty obvious when you've met your match. So certainly was interesting from a parent standpoint, but a lot of proud moments too, for sure.
That's really exciting. Yeah, when it's just one on one. Yeah, I didn't wrestle. I've seen it a couple of times, but this is just a really intense sport.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, you have to be wired a little bit different, I think, to be successful at it. I think I wrestled 1 year in junior high. That was when you could play every sport and try
Oh
it. And
yeah,
I spent more time on my back counting the lights than I did having any success. So it was definitely not for me.
fair enough. Fair enough. You said basketball was for you. What position did you
Yep.
play?
I was a shooting guard
Shooting guard. All right.
for our basketball team. Yeah, I was the kid that when I was growing up would go take the ice chipper out and chip ice and shovel snow on our driveway so I could go shoot baskets for, half hour or whatever. I
Wow.
wish I would have kept that same approach. I got into high school and I found other things to occupy my time probably more than practicing, but I still enjoyed it all through high school. But yeah, I can remember getting yelled at from my parents. It was a Sunday, we were getting ready to go to church, and I was out chipping ice so I could shoot hoops before we went to church. So kind of crazy when you reflect back on it.
Yeah, wow. That's really focused as far as like in the middle of winter you're doing that. That's
I was
intense.
trying.
Yeah, that's
It's a
really
problem with living in the Midwest. You have to deal with the elements no matter what you're trying to play.
Yes, yeah, that's so true. So true. So I know you mentioned that at least with Purina, you've been with Purina over 20 years. I know you said you started off in the Quad Cities. Were there other places that you moved around with Purina, or like kind of? I know you kind of talked through like the first couple of positions. You walk us through like what else you got to do.
Sure. So my career is kind of weird. It's almost like two halves.
Yeah.
The first 2 years was in the Quad Cities at our largest manufacturing facility, and then Nestle bought Purina, which allowed my first move to really Midwest or Iowa, in a town, Fort Dodge,
Okay.
about 25,000 people.
Okay. I know that's right by.
Heavy farming.
It's not too
Yeah.
far from
Yeah.
Ames, so.
Yeah, Ames is like about an hour away. So yeah, you're right. It's one of the closest cities of any size, actually. So heavy farming community, heavy farming presence. All three of our boys were born there.
Oh.
That's when I transitioned out of ISIT into operations.
Okay.
So I spent a year on third shift supervising production and as well as the IT manager, and then a year on first shift hours supervising production, then the IT manager. And then at that point I was promoted to production manager, which I was done with all of ISIT, and it was just really leading all of operations at the factory across all three shifts. And so I was in that role. It was an interesting time in our company. There wasn't a lot of movement at all. We were growing as an organization well, but there just wasn't a lot of people movement.
Oh, wow.
Not many retirements or any other natural attrition.
Okay.
So I was in that role for about 5 years. Some of the first 10 years of my career was spent at two locations.
Oh wow.
And then the moves started. So
Okay.
after Fort Dodge, when my youngest son was about 18 months old, we moved to Western New York.
Wow.
And I was the production manager at our factory right off the Lake Erie there for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Then to St. Louis for about 2 years in a divisional manager role for product development. So I spent time learning about the products we make, how they're nutritionally complete and balanced. I learned a ton about nutrition. The nutritionist at the time that was a part of the team I was leading, he's still with us too. He's fantastic. I mean, to the point where I'm sure I was annoying him. I was asking him so many nutritional questions, and it was about our formulas. But then it started to get personal. I'm like, okay, so if I'm trying to do this for my own diet, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a ton. Kind of had like a sponge mentality then. Then to Lincoln, Nebraska for about 10 months as the assistant factory manager. Yeah, it was a short stint.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quick. And then, so my goal at this time had for the last several years had been to be a factory manager. That's what I really wanted to be. So I had my first opportunity to do this in Ohio. We have a factory about 40 minutes east of Columbus in Zanesville. So I was the factory manager there for about 2 years.
Okay.
which was a really interesting experience. It's not a large factory,
Yeah,
but
I've
the
been there.
gentleman that I was replacing had been there. He and his brother started the company from scratch, like out of this
Oh,
building. Yeah.
wow.
So it was, there was a lot of past practices, and he was a tremendous person, tremendous
Hmm.
leader. But going in, the first person after this whole family
Yeah,
dynasty was a little bit, it felt a little bit clumsy at first,
yeah.
but got my feet under me, and there's a great group of people to work with there. And then you mentioned it earlier, but I was there about 2 years and then asked to come lead our factory in Clinton, Iowa.
Mm, okay,
And so I was in that role for about 3.5 years,
okay.
and then kind of came full circle. The gentleman that hired me out of college to be an IS trainee was retiring, and I was asked to backfill his role, which was
Oh,
this.
wow. I
So
had,
yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm so glad that I'm dating myself here, but I'm so glad my resumes on Monster.com, a year into my career didn't evolve to anything, because I couldn't be happier where I'm at right now, and it's been fun to reflect back on it.
yeah, that's phenomenal. And even full circle. That I think it was that you took over from Terry. So I didn't realize Terry had hired you, and then you
Yeah,
were taking over as VP from him. Like, wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. That's what. If you'd have told me, this would be the case 3 years ago, I'd have thought you're crazy.
Wow.
But things work out somehow, and so I really enjoy the folks I'm working with. Fantastic group, and we're doing some really exciting things right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you kind of mentioned digital manufacturing. I know I got to work with your team a little bit while I was in Purina with some of the digital stuff. I didn't know as far as what you can share, like either what has already been done or maybe has just been implemented. Because I know there's a lot of cool things that people may not realize is happening in manufacturing.
Sure. Yeah, I think manufacturing gets kind of a bum rap. I think,
Hmm.
and I was guilty of this. I said it earlier that I didn't grow up wanting to work in manufacturing.
Hmm.
It was not what I thought would be fun or exciting,
Yeah.
but it really is. And so much of it is different than what you see on movies, where people are coming out of these factories covered in grease and grime,
Hmm.
and after they've worked 18 hours, it's completely different. We're fully regulated by FDA,
Hmm.
USDA, Department of Agriculture, and our places are essentially spotless.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing how they look. And we get that feedback a lot when we tour people from outside of our organization. Um, I just lost my train of thought there. Uh,
Oh, you're good.
Go back to the question, Paul. Sorry, I was going down a tangent there and I lost my train of
No,
thought.
you're good. As far as like what technology advances are like
There we go.
currently
Yes.
having, or yeah,
Sorry, the
no,
thing that we're doing right now.
yeah, no, you're good.
So I think what's unique about our organization is we made a decision about 4 years ago to really take this Industry 4.0 digital transformation serious. And so um, the first thing we did was we had to put the infrastructure in place. You can't,
Hmm.
add a bunch of digital tools without having the backbone in place. It'd
Hmm.
be no different than if you were trying to stream Netflix on, a 56K modem
Yeah,
that dial up modem
it's not
from,
gonna work.
1999. So that's not going to be real effective.
Hmm.
So we did all of that. And I wasn't even a part of this. The group, Terry was leading that team at that time. But if you go into any of our sites right now, you'll see every operator on the floor, they have their own personalized iPad. So they're
Hmm.
using an iPad and the software that we have loaded on it to basically conduct day-to-day business. And
Hmm.
that's everything from understanding where their losses are to understanding the overall performance of the shift and their piece of equipment,
Hmm.
to messaging and communicating with others throughout the
Hmm.
factory, to learning, or troubleshooting. So we have an application on our iPads called Poca. So I'll give them a plug right now. It's essentially like YouTube for
Yeah.
manufacturing. So if you're at home or if I'm at home and we get stuck doing something, I mean, I right to YouTube, like how can I, what's my wiring harness supposed to look like for my son's car stereo,
Hmm.
and they can walk me through it. It's the same thing for manufacturing. So that's been a huge part
Yeah.
and a huge help. So it's pretty cool to see how far we've come. No pen and paper really anymore. It's all digitized. Probably the coolest thing that's adding a ton of value. So it has the cool factor and the value that we're doing right now. Is we've incorporated Spot, the robot from Boston Dynamics. So if you're not familiar with Boston Dynamics, world's greatest robotics manufacturer out on the East Coast, and they have developed it looks like a robotic dog named Spot. And Spot is doing predictive maintenance routes for us in our factory, in 2 of our factories right now, soon to be the rest of the network.
Wow.
Which allows people or maintenance technicians to work on more value-added activities, such as resolving issues or replacing pieces of equipment that need it, instead of just walking the routes. Spot has the tools on Spot to capture all the information and then populate that back to our schedulers and planners. So that's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's let's face it, we make pet food and we've got a robotic dog in our 2 of our factories right now. So it's it hits the mark in more than one way.
Yeah. So that's really cool. The digital transformation that your team has been a part of. I know, like, when I first started with Purina back in 2019, I think that was with the beginning of it. With I know you plugged in Polka.
Yep.
I'll plug in Red Zone as well, because I know they're always plugging Purina in pretty much everything they do. I think that was really the start of it, to introduce the iPads, and then Polka, like you said, the YouTube for manufacturing, it's helped a lot with training as well. And then I just recently saw on LinkedIn they posted about Spot. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's Spot for. I mean, I would encourage anyone to just go to YouTube Boston Dynamics and look at Spot. It's, again, we're getting on this level of technology where it has the it and the wow factor, but it's adding a ton of value. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell everyone we're not doing tech just for the sake of doing tech. If it's not adding value, even if it looks great, we bring it back when it's going to add value for us. And the team at Boston Dynamics has been absolutely outstanding to work with. Great partnership so far, and I'm really excited about where we're going to take this over the next couple of years. But Spot stops traffic. We've had him or it down at our headquarters. And the first time we brought Spot in for a demonstration, which was just a little over a year ago, it was, and you've been down in the square, so around 1 o'clock everybody's coming back from lunch. It was about 12:50 when Spot and the gentleman Caleb Sylvester, who's been great. He's our point of contact. Yeah. He's been fantastic. Also, he walks him in from the parking lot, and I mean, you would have thought like LeBron James had walked into the lobby. Everything just stops. People have their phones out, they're videoing, they're taking pictures, they're asking, "Hey, can I get my picture with the dog?" And I was like, "Well, he's not going to say no, so sure, go ahead." And then, people that had their own dogs with them, the dogs are kind of, not really sure what to think of this robotic impersonator. But it's been really cool. And the best part of this is it's adding a tremendous amount of value and allowing our employees to work on and focus on more value-added activities. So really excited about what we're doing there.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Lots of value, lots of fun too. Got a new celeb came to the school there. That's cool.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, we're almost out of time, but I don't know if is there anything that we haven't talked about, either yourself personally or professionally, that you want the listeners to know about you before we close things out?
Maybe just one last thing, and this was it's a current mentor of mine.
Yeah.
He's been adamant about this, and I've tried to take this when it comes to leading and getting the group to shift and follow vision. Mm-hmm. I can't stress enough providing the why behind the what. Far too often, I think, and I've been on the receiving end of this, I've certainly been on the delivering end of this too, not doing it correctly, but you don't always take time or make time to provide the why on why something is happening or why it's necessary to do X, Y, and Z. And oftentimes that's all people are looking for. Hey, look, I may not agree with it, but if you at least tell me why the heck we're doing this, that I can understand it then. Yeah. We might not be on the same page, but I can understand it. But if it's just, instead it's just an order or a directive, then it becomes really challenging to get people on board and build that momentum that you're looking for. So just from a leadership standpoint, it's something that I've certainly used a lot over the past, 5-6 years, because that's when I started engaging with this individual, and he's been really helping coach myself and others on that very, very simple but very effective approach.
That is really good to start with the why. And that's so true, because oftentimes it's not that you can change what we're doing, but just simply having people understand it, and it helps them buy into it more than just being directed and told, like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. That why factor is really key.
Agree 100%. Yep.
Awesome. Well, it's been amazing having you on the podcast. I should say incredible having you on the podcast. All the knowledge you shared from your story and leadership, and the technological advances happening at Purina as well is remarkable. I want to make sure people know how to connect with you, either through your socials or email, however you want people to be able to stay connected with you.
Sure. No, I think the easiest way is just, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way. And then feel free to, don't hesitate to reach out if you've got questions about anything that we covered or anything outside of this. I think you'll find I'm pretty engaging, and love to, especially if there's a way that I can help. So please don't hesitate to reach out via LinkedIn, and we can take it from there.
Awesome. So I'll make sure I put your name and your LinkedIn in the show notes, so have a link to it. And
Perfect.
Then across the screen, they'll already have put what your name is, so they can just search for it as well, or want to do it.
Awesome.
So if people were listening to it, you should be watching it as well. So aside YouTube, I have to plug that in. If you're not watching it, you should watch it. It's a lot better experience. But thank you for listening as well. And for those already watching it, thank you for watching it. You're doing it right. But it's been incredible having you on the podcast, Roger. Thanks for sharing your leadership journey, the transparency, just understanding that leadership is a journey. It's not something that you just arrive at. And I know there's one thing you mentioned, that when you feel like you've arrived or you are doing everything right, that's when things start to go down, that it's really something that you have to constantly work at and constantly improve. And even, I think one key thing that you mentioned is that you should leave yourself open to the idea of doing something that you didn't expect to do in the first place. He said, 20 plus years ago, you were thinking moving to Chicago and doing other things, and other things happened, and you stuck with it, and now you're doing amazing things. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast. I know you're incredibly busy person with all this the innovation that's happening at Purina, traveling across the country and the world. So I really appreciate your time.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Paul. I appreciate it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone listening, I hope you learned something from Roger's story so that you keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.